learning our own yes and no is the path
That's the path.
of, trusting, listening, asking ourselves, being willing to be patient. Is it still a yes? And get really true with, am I choosing this for me, or am I choosing this because I don't want to let them down? Because I'm used to, wires crossed, saying the opposite. So the whole live your yes is a revolutionary untaming, because it really invites women to get super honest with, oh shit, I just said yes when I really wanted to say, no, I don't want to go out tonight. I just want to binge watch Suits and go to bed early.
Welcome to Alignment Adventures. This is a podcast where we explore what it means to live a fulfilling, aligning, and present life. I'm your host, Lindsay Tanner, and I am so grateful that you are here. Hello, my loves, and welcome back to Alignment Adventures. I am so excited that you are here. We have another beautiful interview today with a truly magnetic soul, Megan Walrod. Now, she is the founder of Live Your Yes, an author, copywriter, authentic marketing coach, and brave living mentor. And I know you guys are just going to want to wrap yourself up in her energy. It's warm, it's comforting, it's exciting, it's expansive. All the things that we need to find our own alignment and to find our own current, like she said, get in your own current, which we'll talk about that in the episode. I also love the way that she uses her own personal stories to help us grasp some of the lessons that she's telling us about, or the things that she is teaching. I find that so useful when we have practical, tangible examples and we can apply that to our own life, because our mind needs the tangible. Our mind needs examples, at least mine does. So, of course, we talk about how she created this message called Living Your Yes and how she went from living a maybe to a total yes. We talk about stepping out of victimhood, navigating darkness, and finding the fertility in dark times. I just love the way that she describes that. We go a lot into journaling, which is one of her favorite practices. And I always talk about journaling on here. So make sure you tune into that part, because she really gives you some beautiful ways to just connect with yourself on a deeper level and really help you cope and deal and heal with that tricky stuff that we all have going on in our own lives through the practice of journaling. We talk about letting all the different facets of ourselves express themselves fully. And then she even goes into the 4 archetypes of the wild feminine, which I absolutely loved that part of the conversation. It was very synchronistic and not something we plan to talk about. I mean, that's how all my conversations go. I start with the usual 2, and then I just see where the conversation flows. But I love how it flows into that beautiful description on Megan's part of the 4 archetypes of the wild woman. And I know all of you listening can connect with each one of those in different ways. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this magnificent, beautiful conversation. I know you're going to love it as much as I did. Well, Megan, thank you so much for coming on Alignment Adventures. I can already tell this is going to be an incredible episode. So thank you for devoting your time and energy for this space.
You're so welcome. I'm so happy to be here. I wonder where we'll go to.
Who knows? Who knows where we'll go? Well, we'll start with the first question, and you can answer this anyway. And this really is a difficult question to answer, because I think we're all still trying to answer it. But anyways, who is Megan Walrod?
Who is Megan Walrod? I would say that I am a star being in a physical body, and I am like the water. I swear I've been a mermaid in past lives. I love to flow with my flow and my current. I'm like fire. I'm fierce and I'm passionate. I'm like air. I have more ideas in one day than you can ever imagine. And I'm like earth. I love that process of turning ideas into the physical reality. And that turns me on. If I had to sum it up, I'm a creator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you brought in all the elements there. That was like such a journey. I love that though, because it's so true. We have all those elements within us at all time.
Yeah. Yeah. We do.
Well, it just made me wonder too, like with your sign, if you have your like sun sign. I'm
I'm a
very
Leo.
novice in zodiac, but you're a Leo. Okay. So
Yeah.
fire.
Yeah. Fire. And I have this huge heart. I like to joke that I have this huge heart. The heart is like where all the alchemy occurs. And I have this big mouth. And I feel like I'm on this planet to share a big message through my big mouth from my heart. So I love
I
that we're
love it.
here having this conversation and I get to share my big mouth from my big heart.
That
Yeah,
is what it's all about. That is truly what it's all about.
exactly.
So thank you for sharing
Exactly.
your big heart with us. And I just love that answer. And I agree. I think I was maybe like some kind of star being or mermaid in a past life as well. Isn't that so interesting to like think about those things?
Yeah. Yeah. We
Uh,
know there's treasures in the depths, like, and we live in between the worlds. Yeah.
and if you guys are watching on YouTube, you've got like a real mermaid vibe behind you, which I
I
love.
do. I do. I have my ocean because, yeah, I
Oh,
need
well,
that. Yeah.
such a good answer to start off with. So we'll just lead that right into the next
Yeah.
one. And what does living in alignment mean to you?
I love that question. For me, al- alignment is a continuous dance and flow. It's never static. I feel like for me in this journey of life, it is me being true to my inner guidance and in my current, one of my old mentors, she was a shamanic practitioner, elder, wise woman. She would always ask us when we'd gather together, are you in your current? Like that was her way of like
Mm,
when we would check in, are you in your current? Because your current is different than hers and hers and hers. Are you in your current? And for me, that is real alignment where I am listening within. I'm listening to the universe and I'm in that dance of creating together. And that's alignment. Like I'm in my current. I'm living what's true for me, how I'm here to live and share and steward and serve and all that.
such a beautiful way to describe that. I love that
Thanks.
saying of are you in your current, along with the theme of mermaids. I love it.
Totally.
How
Yeah.
do we
Thanks.
find our current? Like, I love that idea too. And I think we've all felt it in some way, but I just know a lot of people out there are still searching. Like, that's such a big question
Totally.
and also maybe a simple question, but how do we know what our current is?
That is such a huge, great question. And can I share a short story in answer
Yes.
to that? Because I know there was this time in my life where I completely was stuck. I graduated from graduate school. I had all this experience to be a transpersonal counselor. I didn't have skills to grow a business. And I didn't want to work in like the mental health clinics, but I didn't know like how to transition all this degree knowledge into business work. And I felt so stuck. And so I'd sit in meditation every day at my altar and just like ask spirit for the download. Like, show me the
Mm,
vision of my life. Show me what I'm here to do. Show me my purpose. Da da da. And I felt so in this dark night of the soul for months. Like it was agony. It was depressing. And what helped me find my way out of it was starting to follow the breadcrumbs, like
mm,
the glimmers of gold, the glimmers of things that I was interested in, that I was curious about. Like it didn't, my mistake that I could see upon reflection was waiting for some big vision to be downloaded to me from an outside source so I could know I'm on the right path, I'm doing it correctly. And instead, over the decades since then, I've learned that it's through following those golden gems of like, well, I feel really passionate about supporting women and children. Okay, what does that look like? What brings me joy? What am I curious about? I was curious about midwifing,
mm,
the both doula birthing and deathing. And so I started to just explore having these different experiences that led my path to unfolding to the next and the next. And it was through so many different, like, well, try that. Okay, that didn't work out the way I say in air quotes, like I thought it would, but it gave me all of this awareness of, okay, that's not quite it. So what about this? And it led me to this, and then it led me to that. And it led me to ultimately feeling like I know my calling is to inspire and empower women to reclaim their power from the conditioning that we've all been swimming in, and to know their true voice, their true essence, and what's fun and fulfilling to them. So I didn't know that though in that stuck place, and it didn't come in one download or in one, spiritual experience. And so it really is this follow the breadcrumbs of what you know and those intuitive hits that I believe is spirit co-creating something with us. And as we listen and act on those, more comes,
Mm.
more comes, more comes as we listen and act and respond.
Yes,
So,
yes, yes, yes. I love that so much. I say that all the time of like just follow the nudges. And I think we had
yes.
this like misconception, I wonder where it's from, that it's going to be this big booming voice.
Yeah.
That's from the stories that were told from however you grew up. And a lot of times it's not. It's this very subtle nudge or curiosity of like, oh, I'm curious about this. Like, go, if you're curious, go and research it, go learn about it. And also, what I love about your story is let's normalize, and I think we're starting to, changing your path a lot of times and
Yes.
that being okay.
Yes.
You don't have to go to school for the one thing and do that for the rest of your life. That sounds
Exactly.
awful to me. And I know that's some people's path and may make some people happy. I don't know, but I'm like, there's no way I could do one thing for the rest of my life.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I have two master's degrees, and I know some people would be like, that's such a waste. You could have just like gotten a PhD and then you'd be a doctor, and and it was like, yeah, but I was different. I was interested in these two very different but overlapping pathways, and my path just unfolded to like I was in corporate America, and then I realized my soul is getting sucked dry here. I need something more, and that led me to the transpersonal psychology. And yeah, it's listening to those nudges. And would it be all right if I shared another story with you that so feels in the flow of this
Yes, I love
conversation?
stories. I love
Okay.
practical, like, yes, this is how it looks.
Totally. Yes. And especially given what you were talking about, we usually don't hear this booming voice yet. This is a story about hearing a voice, but it came from within. And sometimes, and this is a story of how I was getting a really clear nudge. This was after that time of grad school. I'd gone through a divorce. I was in a new relationship with a man, and we were growing a business, and we were on track for, a lot of success. And this man, I love this man. He's a great man. He had been my best friend. Like, from the outside in, it looked like I had everything. And so I couldn't figure out though why I felt stuck and unfulfilled and really confused, because I had recreated my life after, divorce. And this looked like everything I thought. So why did I feel so miserable? And I know now that I knew what was missing. I knew what the issue was, but I kept pushing it away because I
Mm,
knew that if I acknowledged what was true, and I'll tell you that in a moment, everything would change.
yeah,
And I had just gone through everything changing. And
yeah.
there was a part of me that felt like I don't have what it takes to go through another tsunami of change. And so I ignored it. I ignored it. I ignored it. I cried to my sisters. I cried to my journal. I prayed about it. What's wrong? What's missing? Why am I stuck? Why am I depressed? What's going on? And one morning I'm sitting and I'm journaling, and I'm like, what's going on? And I'd started to have physical symptoms
Mm,
of like aches and pains, and we thought it was candida and we were treating it as that, but like there's nothing like physical symptoms, mysterious symptoms, to like wake me up to like, okay, I'm really now ready to hear what is it, like I'm ready now. And I heard, you've been living your maybe. And
mm,
it was just like this voice that just, it was just like this knowingness. And I just started crying. I was like, oh my gosh, I am in a relationship with like the safe guy, and
mm,
I'm in a safe harbor, and this so resonates. And I'm crying, and I'm like, so what am I supposed to do? And I swear these words just like bubbled up from my belly. Live your yes.
mm,
And there was just all this lightness and all this sense of, I didn't quite know what that meant. except that it was about follow my heart, listen to my heart. And I also knew what it meant was that I was going to need to start making changes to leave the safe harbor of the
Yeah.
maybe. And so I ended up doing that with the support of a therapist and couples therapy, and left because I realized my heart wasn't in it. I
Yeah.
created a life thinking this would be the safe, secure thing after a divorce, but it didn't have all of me. It didn't have all of my passion.
Yeah.
And so ended the relationship, ended our business together. And yet that catapulted me into a next adventure that brought me into more of my current, my river, my aligned adventure.
Mm.
And that was part of it. It's not that that was wrong or unaligned. It
Yeah.
was part of what
Yeah.
I needed to experience to see a pattern that I had been repeating in relationship. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I was just telling my husband this, from the conversations I've had on here, and your story is such a beautiful example of that. The biggest catalyst for change always, I don't want to say always, but usually comes with, like you said, this dark night of the soul or something you do not want to face or a huge challenge. And I think that is just such a beautiful way to look at challenges instead of
Mm.
like that victim mentality or getting lost in it or spiraling in it or whatever it may be. Like, this is catapulting me into the next version of myself.
Totally. And as I'm hearing you say that, I'm getting chills because I'm now getting to share with you when I went through my divorce, I felt like a complete victim. I went through a phase of blaming and how could he, and just, all of this. And I was in that victim role for a while until I started doing
Yeah.
therapy and realizing, like, oh, if I don't ever want this to happen again, what's my role in this?
Yeah.
Like, what do I need to change? And then, yeah, so then in that relationship, the next one that I ended, I was repeating a similar pattern. Yet this time it was recognizing I'm not a victim here. I get to make different choices and create something new, being in the driver's seat of my life.
Yes.
Yeah,
And that's what your company is yes. Yes.
exactly. Live your yes. And just riffing too, what you were talking about with your husband about so often it's these big crises, or we all know it's that Chinese symbol of crises that also means opportunity. It's like there's victim mode, and recognizing that is a huge key to having our power and becoming the leader. There also can be, it can come from dark night of the soul of like grief. Like
Yeah.
when my mama died in 2016, I was in a lot of grief. Not as there wasn't victim, but there was a lot of grief that
Yeah.
led to another adventure, So there
Yeah.
is a lot of that. Like there's a fertility in that, whether
Mm.
it's death of a relationship, death of a loved one, death of how we've related to ourselves, ending of a job. That's, yeah, huge fertile soil.
I love how you word that. I think it's the Scorpio in me too. Oh my gosh, my husband would roll his eyes, but I've just been so into that recently. I'm like, this explains my life. But I am so fascinated by that death and birth,
Yeah,
relationship too. And you just said it so beautifully, so symbolically. When something dies, that leaves fertile ground for so much
completely.
more to grow. And that is
Completely.
just such a beautiful way to look at it. I hope that is becoming more normalized. This conversation is hopefully helping people normalize that in their lives. But what a
Yeah.
beautiful way to look at death,
Yeah.
whether
I
it's actually happening or just symbolically.
completely. Yeah. Yeah. And we're not shown that. Like we're taught that loss is this complete ending and like desolation. And I mean, I've been in grief in different ways. Like I know it can be like intense. And I was just having a conversation with a client the other day who's going through some empty nesting and being in this question of like, what's the point? Like, what's the point? And we were talk about how to switch out of like, not that she was a victim at all, but like how to shift into a different perspective. I invited her to sit with the question of like, what do you want the point to be?
Mm.
Just hang out with that question for the next week. And I was also talking about how this phase that she's in is a really fertile, because she was talking about it as the void. And I was like, what if it's really a fertile place to be in for yourself. And she was like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, you are interfacing with your soul, with spirit, with source, however you want to talk about it. You are getting like, you're rubbing up against something that's really uncomfortable. What if you trusted that friction and viewed this as like a fertile time? And so
Mm.
whenever we can view it as like fertile, the fertile void, it's like, right, there's possibilities here.
Yeah.
How can I explore them?
I
Yeah.
feel like, you know, talking about stories, I kind of went through that and I've shared it on episodes on here this past few months, just because we've had so much transition. We've moved, we tried to do something we've been dreaming of doing, it didn't work out, blah, blah, blah. So much perceived death or like things not
Mm,
working out the way you
yeah.
perceived. But you're right, like from that space, so much can grow. And I feel like I'm on the other side and seeing all the beauty that is in this opportunity that is created. So, how can we like navigate that, you know, to step into our life that we're dreaming of, or, you know, to say, to find our yeses and say yes to our yeses? How can we navigate that dark time and come back to those?
Oh, I love that question. And here's what I know from my own experiences. Like, let's just take the situation from when my mom died in 2016. There was grief. There was just like this heavy blanket of grief over me for a while. And I just actually wrote a poem about it.
Mm,
I just let grief have its way with me. Like
yeah.
I just let, and there's such a difference between wallowing in our emotions when we just kind of suffer through them, yet grief when there's a way of letting the energy move through us. Like I got to the point where it wasn't like that heavy blanket all the time, but there'd be just, grief could be mistaken as like some days I might just be really irritated and need to go for a drive in my car along the backcountry roads and just yell the F word like
Hmm.
over and over and over again and drink Coca-Cola and eat chips and just like not judge myself and just be like,
Yes.
this is what grief looks like today. Or other days it would look like going for walks down into the forest, or other days it would look like, you know, drawing. And it was just finding healthy ways to be with the grief and honor that and not bypass it,
Mm,
not bypass it, because I feel like we do a huge disservice when we bypass grief in order to, well, I don't want to feel that. I want to create what's next now.
yeah.
I'm just going to ignore that. I'm going to, so there's being with grief. And I love this quote from, oh, I can't remember his name, Martin. I'll find it. It can be included in the show notes. He talks about how grief is the highest form of praise, because it's our
Mm,
ways of saying, I appreciate you. Mom, I appreciate you for giving me life. Sister, I appreciate you for bringing light and music. Lover, I appreciate you for this. Home that I used to know, I appreciate you for that. So there's this grief appreciation. And then there becomes this phase of, for me, after, this period of time with grieving, I started to feel like my soul was inviting me on an adventure. And so my biggest, as far as like how to navigate through these unknown fertile times, for me, it always comes down to listen, like carve space out of your day where you're listening and connecting with yourself. And for me, I call it spirit, source, soul. And one of the most powerful ways I know how to do that, well, two, one is journaling and just letting everything that wants to flow through me onto the page. I was working with my dreams. My journal became a sanctuary to explore ideas.
yeah.
And I'd listen. I'd spend a lot of time in nature and just listening. And there's this magic that occurs when we become available to the universe, to the nudges. They just show up in weird ways. Like I was living in this cute little cottage in Colorado at the time, and I started to just feel this calling of like, I had this image of me on the other side of the world, side by side with brown skinned women and children, and we were planting seeds in gardens. And I was
Mm.
like, I want to do that. I don't know what that's going to be, but I want to do that. So I was like, well, maybe I'll travel for a little while. Maybe I'll volunteer somewhere. What causes do I care about? I started putting post-it notes up on, I called it my creation wall, post-it notes of different causes, post-it notes of different countries. I wanted to hear people's stories. Who would want to share their stories with me? Um, so I was just in this total literal follow the breadcrumbs, and over months of just listening and following this energy and being in my current, I started to crystallize of this vision of volunteering in Eastern Africa with a nonprofit that does work with adolescent girls. I want to do that. I found a nonprofit. They said yes to me. I said yes to them. I ended up going and spending 6 months on the other side of the planet in Uganda and living with a family, volunteering with this team. We wrote a book of their stories, the girls' stories that they support. The nonprofit is um, Girl Up Initiative Uganda. And like that was guided by me listening. That was catalyzed by grieving. That was an adventure of a lifetime that didn't all come together at once. It was me just following and like having a conversation with this nonprofit about this and it feeling really great and all these synchronicities, but no, that wasn't it. Okay, what about
Yeah.
this one? No, that wasn't it. What about this one? And moments of like, oh, why isn't it working out? And then being like, oh, it's working out. I'm being invited to be persistent and
Yeah.
patient and stay with the process. So anyway, I know that was a long answer. It just like for me, it always comes down to that, like listening, having patience, not giving up, and trusting that those glimmers that are talking to us are actually talking to us.
Mm.
Like it's real. Elizabeth Gilbert talks about it as big magic. And her viewpoint on creativity is there are magical ideas that can only come through into the world through human collaborators. So if one of
Mm.
those ideas is knocking on your door, it's like
Yes.
when you answer it, that's the only way it can get created.
I love that story so much. And that reminds me of something I've heard, which I feel like aligns with that, which Big Magic has been on my list to read for a long time. Thank you for reminding me that I
You're
need to read
welcome.
it. But it was something along the lines like if you have an idea, it's not random. You have the idea because someone else needs you to create that idea. Like things come to you for a reason. And I just love hearing stories of synchronicities and magic so much because it does. Once you start doing this stuff, it's like things line up in ways you could have never imagined.
Completely.
And that's why you need to be like so open and patient, which is hard
Yes.
because it's going to surprise you. And you mentioned a practice, and I know you have a book about this coming out. So let's talk a little bit about journaling because you said
Yeah.
journaling really helped you in this
Yeah.
process. I talk about it a lot, but I feel like people they just don't take the time to do it. Either they tried it and it's not worked, or whatever mind story they have about journaling. What are some ways that people can start that practice that is going to make it like so meaningful for them and help them through this transformation to their
Yeah.
yeses?
I love this question and so true. Cause okay, so here's some mistakes of what not to do with journaling. Like journaling isn't about today I went to the thing and did the did like I totally remember doing that like as a little girl with a diary of like today John sat next to me or whatever, like whatever, little crushes I might have had or something. I mean, it's not that that's a bad thing or a wrong thing, and it can be your starting point
Yeah.
of like today I went to the gym and da da da. And yet what journaling invites us into is to be our mermaid selves and to go beneath the surface and to explore our emotions, explore those triggers. And it might look like I got really mad when so and so did that thing. I wonder why I'm so mad about it. Like what was that bringing up for me? So it's this way of almost like a therapeutic, we're almost
Mm.
facilitating ourselves through wonder getting curious with ourselves of like what was that about, what did that remind me of? So that's one way that journaling can
Mhm.
look. Another way journaling, I mean, and it can look so many different ways. I don't mean to
Mhm.
imply that there's just like one or two. Another way it can look is saying all the things that we haven't felt safe to say out loud. And so for me, that giving ourselves a safe space to express all the things is so important because it moves us out of us onto the page where we can start to look at it, acknowledge what's true for us, begin to work with it in a different way. So there's that. And then I'll just say one of the things and there might be some available on my website, journaling prompts, because I've done journaling workshops with women off and on over the years, because I love the way I see it. The braver we're willing to be on the page, the braver we're able to be in our living. So I call it brave writing, brave living. And journaling prompts can be a great way to catalyze thoughts and intuition and guidance beyond what we might think about. So the power of a prompt is, and a prompt could be something like, the thing I don't want you to know about me is,
Mm.
or the thing I really want to say is this, or I don't feel safe bringing this up to them because da 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 da. And so, like, you could take that prompt, and then what I love to do is encourage women to, or people to, like, set a timer, like set a 5-minute timer with that prompt. So for 5 minutes, you put fingers to the keyboard or pen to the page and you just write. You don't edit, you don't stop. I learned this from Natalie Goldberg, who's an amazing, her books, Writing Down the Bones, and she's got a bunch of books with prompts in those that are a great thing to play with too. Fingers to the keyboard, pen to the page, just write for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, go. You don't edit, you don't stop. And if you find yourself saying, I don't know what to say, here's another prompt you can play with. If I did know what to say, what would I say? Or just start writing. If I did know what to say, what would I say? If I did know what to write, what would I write? If I did know what to write, oh, I would say that this da 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 da. So we don't stay fixated with I don't know or I'm stuck. We look at, if I did know, what would I say? And so that opens it up.
I love that. It just made me think like journaling is such a good practice of that openness and non-judgmental part of us, like practicing
Yes.
that skill. Like you really have to get into that space because if
Yes.
you judge yourself or you're not, you're not going to get anywhere. You have to be so open and non-judgmental about what comes out, whether you're typing
Completely.
it, writing it, whatever.
Completely. I'm so glad you spoke to that too, because that's a huge part of the practice. And it's like, we're cultivating our own safe space where it's like, see if you can melt the judgment and increase the compassion and curiosity. And this isn't about having some polished something that you're going to use as a poem or a post or an email. It's like, this is for you. If you want to turn it into something like that later,
Hmm.
you can. But when it's just you on the page, like,
Yeah.
make typos, make mistakes. It's all like, let yourself be messy. Cause that's
Yeah.
the thing too, that I just feel like there's so much crazy making pressure that we put on ourselves, that we had put on ourselves, the conditioning of like, be perfect. Children aren't meant to be heard only if spoken. Like, there's so much stuff that, like, oftentimes when we as women haven't learned how to express our anger or learned how to express our needs or our desires, we can feel really messy or volcanic when we first start expressing it. So doing it in the pages of our journals first
Yeah.
is such a safe place to do it, because it's like, be messy all you want, explode on the page, like, yeah, let that be
Something
the
you
place.
said resonated with me a lot too when you're journaling. And I've noticed this even when I'm trying to like communicate something. I, and I mean, this is no offense to anyone that actually has this, but I feel like I have multiple personalities. I will like say something that like really triggers me, and then I see it from a different perspective. And I'm like, well, I don't really feel that way. I feel that way because of this. And I think that's what's so powerful about doing it in a journal is, yeah, like you're not judging yourself and you have multiple, like all the different sides of you come out and you can start to
Completely.
see it. Once it's on that page, you see it from that higher perspective of like, oh, I don't necessarily really feel that way. I just think I feel that way because of X, Y, and Z or whatever it may be.
Totally. Yeah. 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 That could even become a great journaling exercise where it's like, oh, that, the victim, let's just say it's like post-divorce, like, how dare he? I could be writing as like, how dare he? Da 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 da. And like, like, we're amicable now, like all is well now. We've, healed that. We're friends now. But at the time, like, so then the observer gets to step in and be like, oh, that's my victim. Hey, girl, I totally get it. I know what an asshole he is, isn't he? And so I hope that was okay.
Yeah.
And what does my wise woman self have to say about this?
Mm,
Let's bring in her perspective. It's almost like it is exactly like there's a form of therapy called Gestalt therapy. Gestalt is
mm,
the whole, and
mm,
so it's like we get to explore all our different parts, like what does my wise woman say? What does my inner child have to say about this? What is,
mm.
what does the victim have to say? So it's like they all get to be heard instead of any of them made right and any of them shut down. Yeah.
I love that. What does your wise woman say? Like I just picture myself as like the older I get. I always say the older I get, I hope I get like more like I'm just get crazier and crazier in a good way.
Yeah.
Like just
Yeah.
more into my, what I'm into.
Yeah.
How do we get in touch with that part of us? Like what are some ways that I mean journaling probably,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like the wise woman that one of us has, it's mostly females
Yeah.
listening. How do we get in
Yeah.
touch with her?
Yeah. So I love that you're asking that. And I feel like just in full service of the wise woman, I want to share something with you in a bigger context that I've been exploring lately and working with my clients around is actually these four archetypes of the
Mm,
wild feminine. And
mm,
one of them is the wise woman, and there's the wild child, and there's the sensual goddess, and there's the wealthy queen. And they each
mm,
bring to us these practices, and they each, the way that they've been showing me, they each have these keys to unlock more of our power from ways that we've hidden or repressed or suppressed it. And so the wise woman, I love that the wise woman is here today in this conversation with us. For me, the wise woman holds that key that unlocks our intuition
mm,
and what I like to call our womb wisdom. And journaling is a direct line into her. And one of my practices I've been doing for years is when I journal, there's this surrendering element to, like, once I get, once I'm like, I might be working through, like, I had this dream, and then I'll drop into what's the message in this for me? Or drop into my body, out of my head, into my heart, into my womb. Like, what is the guidance that I need to hear today? What is the guidance for me
mm.
today? And so, women listening to this in your own journaling practice, or you could play with this with meditation. Although for me, journaling works so much more to have a
Yeah.
conversation. So I will intentionally drop into this very soft, open, vulnerable space of, to me, vulnerable is like permeable. I am
Mm,
open, I am receptive, and just tune in, tap into what does my wise woman self know about this? Or, like I was saying, what guidance is available to me today?
mhm.
And we grow that relationship when we ask these questions, when we show up, when we listen, and when we actually begin to act on those nudges, as you call them. Or sometimes it doesn't require action. Sometimes it's just the guidance of, like, babe, you're on the right path. Like, trust yourself, trust us. We're with you. You're so okay. Other times it's like, I was getting the guidance to bring a relationship to an end, and I was ignoring that for a while. So it's like
Mm,
when we're willing to be acting on what is being shared with us, that strengthens the connection. And from what I've seen, the more I'm like, okay, got that intuitive hit, got that guidance, I'm acting on it, more can come. And if
yes,
we're not acting on it, it's not that we're disconnected from our intuition, or we're not, it's not there, it's not coming. It's just that there might be something there for you to respond to first
first.
before more can be shared with you. Because it's kind of
Totally.
like you got to exercise this muscle of courage and vulnerability in your outer life first before that next wave of insight can come to you. So,
I love that explanation. And I want to hear about these other archetypes, totally. But I have one thing to say about that.
yeah.
It makes me think of, I feel like the misconception with like flow and surrender to life is a
Mm,
lot of times people think, you're not doing anything, but that's the opposite. It's what you just explained of what is coming to you in this moment. What do you feel excited to do? What do you feel the nudge to
yeah,
do? What are the sparks, the glimmers that you said? Take action on those. And it's just like one breadcrumb at a time. And sometimes we want to see like the whole thing, and that's not the
totally.
point. It's just like one step at a time. And that's how you live a life in flow and surrender. It's just like taking that aligned action.
Totally, completely. Being in the aligned adventure of it completely. And there's such a misconception that surrender is a weakness. Because, I mean, look at it just even in the dictionary, you look up surrender and it's like they're waving the white flag, like mercy, we
Mhm,
give
mhm,
up, we're the
mhm,
weak ones. And so, for women, another book that I highly recommend besides Big Magic is Untamed by
mm,
Glennon Doyle.
mm.
Have you read it?
No, but it's also I've heard
So,
it's so good.
it's such a great read because she is bringing into the mainstream awareness of the conditioning, all the cultural conditioning and the stories that we've been taught since we were in the womb about what a girl should be, what she shouldn't be, what's okay to say and express, what's not okay, and so untaming is the unwinding of all of those stories of
Mm,
limitation of who we thought we were supposed to be to actually be wild and untamed and be
yes,
creating and living and expressing our wild adventure of a life. And you asked me a question, now I completely forgot the question.
that's okay. We can come back to it, and I think this is
Okay.
gonna connect. It's gonna come full circle.
Okay.
It makes me think of a book that I tried to read. I just don't think I was in the right space yet, but my grandma always praised it, and it was
Yeah.
She Runs with Wolves, or you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Am
Yeah,
I
yeah,
saying it
yeah.
right?
Yes, She Runs with Wolves. Yeah,
Yeah, and
Clarissa Pinkola Estes.
I just
Yes,
think I'm gonna read it at some point and it's gonna hit, but I tried to read it and I was like, I know this isn't my time yet, but I will read it and it will transform my life.
I totally get that. I totally get that. Books have that kind of medicine where it's like, not yet. Okay, now, but only a chapter. Okay.
For
Yeah.
sure. And
Yeah.
sometimes I go back and read it or another book, reread it. And I'm like, I'm getting so much more. But it's like another book I just read. I can't remember the name of it, but I think it was called Witch, like Unapologetic, Untamed. I don't know. I just saw it at the library and I was like, I need to read this. But it's just that theme again of like rewilding the woman, like
Yes.
coming
Yes.
back to our wild, powerful roots, which I feel like is
Yes.
going to connect with that question of like the other archetypes of the woman.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I feel like that's what we're all going through right now, is just like reclaiming that power. And I was just telling my friends this. It doesn't matter if you've like had kids or not. Like you have, as a woman, you have that creative, like literally life creative, creating
Yeah.
art, creating whatever power within you. It's just like reconnecting with that. So I feel like that's what the other archetypes
Completely.
do.
Completely. Well, it's all and absolutely. I mean, you know, there's been this like growing critical mass, it feels like, of a lot of people that have been talking about we're coming into a new era, more of the divine feminine is rising. And I like the talk has been like the divine feminine is returning. And I'm like, she never went anywhere. She's always been in us. We're just now rewilding. We're reconnecting with that wild, powerful
Mm,
self of us. And so you're asking about the archetypes. Absolutely. So there's the wise woman who connects
mhm,
us with our intuition. She unlocks, and each archetype also serves us because there's like a wound that we have. Because when we're not connected to our intuition, we doubt ourselves a lot. Because we're taught to
mm,
not, we're not taught to listen to what we know. We're taught to
mhm,
like, well, do what I say because I'm your parent and I know better.
mm,
And so doubt can become that symptom of, oh, I'm disconnected from the wise woman. How do I connect in with her? Listen, get connected to my intuition and to my womb wisdom. And
mm.
so that's our power. That's one form of our power with our intuition.
Yeah.
The second archetype is the wild child. And she's got the key that unlocks our voice. And so, again, the symptom that we're disconnected from her is this people pleasing. Saying yes when we mean no, and no when we mean yes, and feeling guilty if we if we're doing that. And so unlocking our voice is getting into the power of our expression and our
Mm,
voice and sacred yes and no. And I call it uncrossing our wires. So we're saying yes when we mean yes and no when we mean no. And when we're doing that, we're so much more powerful. So each of these archetypes have a different key, have this
yeah.
different gift for us that unlocks more of our power. Sensual goddess is all about, well, the symptom that we're disconnected from her is shame. And I mean, this is just like, this is just the tip of the iceberg for each yet big, potent, and they're still teaching me too. Like I'm
Yeah.
actively in conversations with women of like, let's be in practice with these. And what do you know about these archetypes and how are these
Mm.
practices helping you? And so
Yeah.
the sensual goddess, the symptom we're disconnected from her is the shame, and we're not valuing ourselves. We're outsourcing our value. We're looking outside of ourselves for evidence that we're worthy or not. Yet, so she gives us that key to unlock our value and our knowingness of our enoughness and our abundance and our willingness to prioritize what's important to us without guilt, without shame. That's the sensual goddess. And the wealthy queen, oh, like each one of these, just like, oh, she gives us that key that unlocks our inner authority that just knows, like, I am the leader of my life. And there's no giving that up to anyone else. And so often the symptom that we're disconnected from her is we might be feeling really insecure or in that imposter
Mm.
syndrome or even in that victim mindset of like, why did this happen to me? Versus when there's that healing of the wealthy queen, we're in our real state of true wealth, of like, we are in that leadership of our life. And they all have these overlaps. They all work together. It's not like you're this one and I'm this one. It's more of like, I'm actually in the process of creating a quiz right now around helping women identify which is their hidden feminine archetype, because
Mm.
the one that's the most hidden is the one that you want to be able to unlock her power for you. So it's a quiz that will help you identify her and then give tips for how to activate that archetype so you can actually begin to have that power available to you, that life force energy to create your life, your aligned adventure. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I'm feel honored to get to share these with you.
As you were describing each one, I could just like feel it in my body, like being activated. Like, yes, that is a part of me. And like we've said, we've just forgotten. So I love that you're going to have a quiz
Totally.
where people can take it, or women,
Yeah.
or whatever,
Yeah. It's
can
for
take it
women.
and identify what part of them they need to reconnect with. As you said, wild child, I was like, I feel like that's what I've been working on recently. But definitely some other aspects like the queen, and that leads me into another question I wanted to ask you in terms of wealth. And I feel like this is connected to just like our value in general. But I feel like with women specifically, I hate to stereotype it that way, but I just know that's a common struggle is,
Mhm.
building that own abundance, especially when you're trying to follow your passion. You run
Totally.
into those roadblocks of how am I going to support myself? How is this going to work out? So do you have any like tips or takes on how to step into that mindset of abundance and wealth? I mean, obviously, we're talking about in the form of money, but I know it
Yeah.
encompasses a lot more than that.
It's all so connected. And I'll be the first to acknowledge like this continues to be one of my growing edges, like with wealth and money and the wealthy queen and like, and the sensual goddess, because she's about value and abundance
Yeah.
too. They overlap. And I look back at my life and I know I've come so far. And so I'm like so excited about this next level of my own growth with money and receiving, because the sensual
Mm,
goddess is all about receiving. And so there's two big things I would suggest. One is like like exploring that sensual goddess archetype in
mm,
yourself of like, where can you receive more and allow yourself to receive more? And this includes ourselves. Receive the gift of you, the magic of you, the power of you, like all of you. So there's receiving self, there's receiving support, money from others. So there's like that inner work of receiving. And then the outer work, so to say. And for the last 15 years, I was a business coach, authentic marketing coach. And so there's pragmatic things to
yeah.
know and to learn to grow your business. My superpower was with words. Like, how do we talk about what we do? How do we
Mm,
write about our services, our products, that kind of thing. So there's definitely like skills that can be learned to bring those gifts out in a lucrative way. And we have to have both though. Because
Yeah.
I mean, if we just go the route of, okay, I'm learning the 3 steps to do this and the formula for this. That's the other mistake though, too, is like believing that there's one formula that's going to work.
Yes.
It's like, that's one of the things that frustrates me about the marketing world is like every marketer has their like, this is the formula, this is the way to do it. And so that's where it's the both and too of like, be willing to learn some different things and see what may have worked for other people. But ultimately it's like, what does your wise woman self know? Like, what is your guidance? What's your current and way of creating that is actually going to work for you and your audience?
That's
So
so powerful because there's so much
and
noise out there,
so much.
especially I know you can relate as someone like not doing the norm, building a business, starting something from scratch. There's really no set path. And that's the fun part. But also the frustrating part sometimes is like you get tempted with like following these 5 steps or do these 3 things when really it's always within you and you're just
Yeah.
always reminded of that.
And that's the thing is it is such a both and like I've seen so many in some ways the path of business, I'm reminded of like the jazz singer or the jazz musician who like you learn certain skills and scales first, right? That are just like foundational. And then once you have that, improv away,
Yeah.
And so like I grew my business and I grew certain skills and saw what innate skills I had, picked up other ones that I needed on selling, marketing, that kind of thing. And like I learned the scales to get a foundation growing. And then it was like, then I began to improvise more. And then I began to go out into more woo woo terrain and explore things. So it's not that
Mhm.
we can't start there at
Yeah.
all. And,
Yeah.
and like, I welcome the woo woo and the pragmatic. They can go
Yeah.
hand in hand. There was just the acknowledgement that yes, we can trust our inner guidance. And one of the things that I've seen stop women from being successful at sharing their magic and gifts is that they say, I hate sales. It's not about money. So I'm going to do it my way, which is like telling my 3 friends about it and then wonder why I don't have clients. And
Mm.
and so that's why, yes, there's a listening to yourself, but you also need to look at where what you think is your inner truth is actually this inner conditioning saboteur, this messaging that sales is bad and wrong. There's not a way to do it that's aligned with your heart. There absolutely is. And
Yeah.
so it's just like questioning
Mm.
the thoughts that tell you I'm bad and wrong if I charge for sharing my gifts. No, you're not.
Yeah.
Money, it can be a spiritual, energetic exchange as if I were to give you cowrie shells for like
Yeah.
in a reading. So it's being willing to question those thoughts that we think are our truth, if
You're
that makes
talking
sense.
right to me. You're talking directly to me. So thank you for that,
You're
for receiving
welcome.
it. It makes me think of, I keep referencing books, but I just read the
I
fifth
love it.
agreement. And that's the fifth agreement is like, what was it? Question everything, but listen. And I love
Mm,
that. Question the thoughts that are holding you back. Like just question
yeah.
them and see if they really are your truth. Okay.
Yes.
I want to
Okay.
respect your time, but I do have a
Okay.
few more questions.
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
In line with your, live your yes. How do we know what is a yes and what is a no? Like, there's some quick ways to know what a yes and a no is?
Well, I'll share with you what is kind of like can be a helpful, I don't even want to call it a rule of thumb, but there I just called it that. I'll share with you what I see works for me and the women that I've supported. And ultimately though, each woman has got to find this for themselves. So for me, what I found is my yes, when something really lights me up, sometimes there's spontaneous clapping. There might be a sense of like, there's this huge smile on my face. There's this joyful, like effervescence. For me, that's a yes. For the no, there's often just like this heavy
Mm,
no, like no, just
mm,
no. And I've learned, so that's kind of one way to look at it. Like
mhm.
the yes is this light energy, this sense of like,
Yeah.
yes, this is going to create more of what I'm wanting. The no is like a heavier, denser energy. Now, something to keep in mind, I've learned a lot over the last couple of years about human design. I am not an expert at all, but I just worked with a mentor to understand my human
Mhm.
design. It's a whole like
Yeah.
body of work. And different people have a different way of getting clear with their yes and no. I have
Mhm.
what's, and just to keep this just super short, because again, I'm not an expert, but I think it could be really helpful to
Yeah.
listeners. I have what's called an emotional wave. So I might be a yes today, but my job is to listen, see where it's at tomorrow. Tomorrow it might be a no, and keep listening till I'm in the calm beyond the yes and no. That's where I get
Mhm.
my clarity.
Mm.
Other people might get that sacral yes, no, and they'll just feel it in their root. Like they'll just feel it in their like, it's a yeah or it's a no. And I don't believe in the thing that people say where if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. I don't believe
Mm.
in that.
Mhm.
I think that sets us up for like this polarity that doesn't
Yeah.
need to exist.
Yeah.
So it could be yes, but not now,
Yeah.
or no, but just now's not the time.
Mm.
And so there's learning our own yes and no is the path
That's the path.
of, yeah,
That's the
trusting,
way.
listening, asking ourselves, being willing to be patient. Is it still a yes? And get really true with, am I choosing this for me or am I choosing this because
Mm.
I don't want to let them down? Because I'm used to, you know, wires crossed, saying the opposite. So the whole live your yes is a revolutionary untaming because it really invites women to get super honest with, oh shit, I just said yes when I really wanted to say, no, I don't want to go out tonight. I just want to binge watch Suits and go to bed early, or like,
Yeah,
so
or no, I
it's
don't want to
an
help you with this
honesty.
thing. Like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, I love your explanation for if it's not a hell, not believing in that. If it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. I so relate to that because our humans love polarity. We love being
Yeah.
on, we're this or we're that. You're this way or you're that way. When
Totally.
there's a whole spectrum in the middle. So
Yeah.
thank you for reminding us of that.
Yeah.
If it's not a yes, maybe just not a yes right now.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that is such an important reminder that people need to hear. Okay, my last few things. People are connecting, they're vibing, they want more of Megan. How can they do that? What can they do? How can they work with you? All the things.
So you can go to my website, meganwalrod.com, and there will be a quiz you can check out. Ultimately, there's going to be two quizzes. And the one we talked about, though, they'll both be dealing with the archetypes, so you can check those out. There may be some journaling prompts available. And so the website is a great place to see different ways to work with me, upcoming free trainings, maybe journal workshop. I also have a Facebook group called
Mm,
Brave Women, Brave Living. And so it's, you can join. It's a place to connect with other women who are on this journey of living their yes, being brave. And there's journaling prompts in there as well, based on earlier podcast episodes of mine. So that's like a community place if you want to come and
mm,
continue these conversations in that way.
mm. Community
So
is so, so important. So thank you for creating that. That sounds amazing.
you're
I will link
welcome.
all of that, of course.
Okay.
Now, my last two fun questions. I like to ask people what their alignment activity is. So just an activity that you love to do where like space and time disappears. I think it helps us understand you on a deeper level. And I also think it gives ideas to other people like, oh, I should go try
Totally.
that.
I love that question. I love that you call it alignment activities, just so because it's like so naming what it is. So in addition to journaling, I love spending time in nature, going for hikes. And I just went on a hike yesterday afternoon. I have this place that I go to across the river. I'm going to go hiking this afternoon. Like
Mm,
it is the place where I reset, refuel, reconnect with what's really true and important. And there's everything too about moving my body
mm,
that it helps me get out of my head. I can, there's a lot of activity up there. Get out of my head, into my body and into nature, which reminds me of my true nature. I know it sounds cliche, but it's so true. So that's my go-to, that and journaling.
So true. No one can deny they feel different in nature. Like no
Totally.
one can deny. And if you haven't done that in a while, just like experiment, try, see what
Totally,
happens.
totally. And it can be, you go out and spend 5 minutes barefoot on the grass. It
Mm,
could be you go for a walk in your local park. I mean,
hmm
I'm blessed. I live in Portland, Oregon. There's like forests and mountains and rivers, oh my, and waterfalls, and yet like wherever you are, it's just getting out to where you can like, this is the sensual goddess, inviting her in of like the hedonistic, the senses, like touch the bark, smell the air after a storm, or just
hmm
notice what you smell, like all the senses. What do you hear?
hmm
Maybe you won't taste the bark, but you know what I'm saying. Like just engage
Yeah.
all your senses, because that also reminds us like we are wild creatures.
hmm
We are animals. Like get into the skin of your body and just revel in that.
Oh my gosh, you're just inspiring me to like go run outside and I don't even
Yay.
know, do what.
I
It's
love
sunny.
it.
It's sunny
Play.
outside for the first
Yes.
time in like forever. And I do want to say this. You live in a beautiful area. I was going to say that before you did. You live in a beautiful area. And if you do live in a beautiful area, go explore it. Like, don't be like, oh, I'll
Totally.
go see it someday. Go see it. I live in an area that people may or may not say is beautiful. I think is beautiful in its own way. It doesn't matter. Like, go and connect with your land, like with the land
Yeah.
around you. It's magical. So
Yeah.
thank you for that reminder. Okay.
You're
My last
welcome.
question, I swear.
Okay.
If you had to give one piece of advice, which I know can be tricky sometimes, on like for anyone on this journey at any point,
Yeah.
what would it be?
Yeah. Bring in more play. Let yourself prioritize play. This is a gift from the wild child. And in addition to, nature and journaling, it would just be like, let yourself play. What brings you joy? What's fun for you? Is it like getting messy with pastels and paper, or going out and not having a destination in mind? Just like
Mm,
bebopping around. Is it like there are so many ways that we take ourselves, maybe I'll just speak for myself, maybe it's just me, I can take myself really seriously. We got a business, we got to run in this and it's like play can be anything from like dancing while I'm working out, or dancing while I'm doing the dishes, or go out to see some comedy, or listen to comedy on the radio, or just like whatever brings that play and that laughter. And it's like play for no agenda. We're not trying to create, a beautiful piece of art or a poem or anything. It's like we're just playing. So getting
mm.
in touch with that inner child who knows play. Go swinging, go slide down the slide in the neighborhood park. Like, yeah.
I love swinging so much. I
Mm,
love that you
it,
mentioned that. Like that's a good reminder to me to just go swing or dance or
yeah.
whatever. And that
Yeah.
also was I put it on, think what you want about vision boards. But that's one of the things I put on my vision board was fun. Like have
Awesome.
more fun.
Yeah.
Such a good
Yes.
reminder. Megan, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your beautiful wisdom, your just magnetic energy and all the good tidbits. This is going to be the one of those I'm sure I'm going to go back and listen to so many times.
Oh,
So thank you so much.
you are so welcome. It's been such an honor to be with you in this time and space and to get to share. And we've been in the river with each other. So thank you for the questions and the space you hold that allows these conversations to unfold this way.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Yeah, it's been quite a journey. I was going to say that too. We've been here, there, and everywhere. So thank you for
Yeah.
coming on
Yeah.
this adventure
My
with me.
total pleasure.
Megan, again, thank you so much for coming on Alignment Adventures. Like I said, I know this is one I'm going to go back and listen to many times for all the reminders. If you love her energy and want to see more of her on your Instagram feed, go and check her out on Instagram. It is Megan, Megan Walrod, Walrod. And you can also go to meganwalrod.com and she has quite an array of different offers, different ways that you can work with her. But please share any takeaways you have with either of us on Instagram. You can screenshot it and tag us in your stories. We love seeing your takeaways. My handle is at Lindsay with an A, M is in Michelle Tanner. If you are new here, please consider subscribing. We have new episodes about every week. I would say we have about 3 new episodes a month. It used to be every week, but it's not anymore, and that is okay. Also, if it feels aligning, please rate and review the podcast. That is such a beautiful, free, expansive way to support my work. and share it with anyone that you think needs to hear this specific message from Megan and needs this beautiful energy in their life. But again, thank you so much for taking time and space to be with me here today, for letting me into your alignment journey. We're all in this together, and we're all just doing our best to figure it out and having fun along the way, like Megan said. So I'm sending you all so much love, all the highest vibes, and I will see you in the next episode.